The photograph was 4 inches by 6, creased down the middle where the folder had pressed it flat for 2 years. A little girl, 3 years old, brown skin, wide eyes that looked like they were asking a question nobody in the room knew how to answer. She was holding a stuffed rabbit with one ear missing. Behind her, a kitchen she did not live in anymore. Foster home number 1. The kind one. The one that lost their house. Sojin held the photograph at 3 in the morning in a study lit by a single desk lamp. The estate was silent. Security rotation had passed 12 minutes ago. The corridor outside was empty. He turned the photograph over. On the back, pencil handwriting from the investigator who found it. Zara James. Age 3. Norfolk, Virginia. Ward of the state. He had been looking at this photograph for 2 years. Some nights he took it out and studied it, the way a man studies a map to a place he knows he should not go. Other nights, the drawer stayed locked, and he paced the study until the lighter in his pocket ran out of clicks. Tonight, he looked. The girl in the photograph did not know that her mother had saved a man's life in a parking lot. Did not know that the man spent 30 years searching for her. Did not know that his son would find her in a hotel in Baltimore making beds for strangers, and decide to move her across the state like a chess piece positioned for a game she did not know she was playing. Now, before we continue, if this story already has your heart in a chokehold, do me a small favor. That subscribe button is free, the bell costs nothing, and dropping your location in the comments takes 2 seconds. You do that for me, and I promise this story is about to take you somewhere you are not ready for. Now let us keep going. He closed the file, placed the photograph inside, locked the drawer. His hand trembled when he turned the key. Not from weakness, from the weight of carrying something that would destroy everything it touched. The moment it was exposed to air, he pressed his forehead against the desk and breathed. 7:15 in the morning. Sunlight hit the east wing and turned the corridor from medical cold to something almost warm. Zara walked toward Elder Park's room with a tray, 3 medication bottles, glass of water, folded cloth. The same tray she had carried every morning for 9 months. Same route. Same rhythm. Same flat shoes making no sound on hardwood, but the room she walked from was different now. 3 weeks since the truth about Lorraine. 3 weeks since the will. 3 weeks since Vivian walked out and Madame Park said, "I may never like you," and the house exhaled something it had been holding for 40 years. In those 3 weeks, Sojin had moved her from the staff wing, not to a guest room, to a real room in the main house. 2nd floor, east corridor, a bed with a headboard, a closet with hangers, a window that looked out over the garden where morning light pooled on stone paths like spilled honey. She still made her own bed. Hospital corners. Tight enough to bounce a quarter. She still ate in the kitchen with Darla at hours when the main dining room was empty. Still wore navy scrubs. Still kept her hair in its high puff of coils that caught whatever light was available and held it. Old habits were not stubbornness. They were armor. And Zara was not ready to walk through this house unprotected. She entered Elder Park's room. He was awake, propped against pillows, eyes clear. A good morning. Good mornings were becoming more frequent since she moved closer. The doctors credited medication adjustment. Zara credited proximity. Healing was not always chemical. Sometimes it was the sound of footsteps a patient learned to trust arriving at the same time each day. "You are early," he said. "You are awake." Could not sleep. Dreaming about your mother again. She set the tray on the bedside table, checked the IV line, adjusted the oxygen sensor on his finger, wrote numbers in her notebook without looking at the page because muscle memory handled what her mind was busy processing. What was she wearing this time? He smiled. They had developed this routine. He dreamed of Lorraine. She asked what Lorraine wore. He described outfits that might have been memory or might have been imagination, and neither of them cared which, because the telling was the point. Blue coat. The one with the buttons that did not match. She was standing outside the clinic. Smoking a cigarette she kept hiding behind her back like she was ashamed of it. Zara smiled, both dimples. My mother smoked? Only when she was stressed. She held the cigarette like it had personally offended her. Zara laughed, a real one. The sound was rare enough in this house that it startled the silence in the hallway. She gave him his morning medication. 3 pills. 1 for the liver, 2 for pain management. He swallowed them with the patience of a man who had been swallowing pills for 2 years and had stopped expecting them to fix anything. She noted the time. Dosage. His response. All in the notebook. How are your classes? He asked. Pharmacology exam next week. Anatomy review due Friday. Clinical rotation starts in 3 weeks. You will finish this time. Yes. Good. Your mother would have finished too. She was 2 semesters short when he stopped. The sentence ended where it always ended. At the edge of a cliff neither of them could see the bottom of. Zara squeezed his hand. I know. She left his room at 8 and walked toward the main house. The corridor between the east wing and the central hall was where 2 worlds met. Medical cold behind her, household warmth ahead. She crossed it every day, and every day the crossing felt like stepping between 2 versions of herself. The caretaker and the woman. The professional and the person who had started setting a second photograph on her nightstand beside her mother's. The second photograph was not from this house. It was one Darla had taken 2 weeks ago in the kitchen. Zara and Elder Park. She was reading to him. He was smiling. Neither of them knew the camera was there. It was the first photograph anyone had taken of Zara since she was 17. She turned the corner toward the main staircase and stopped. Sojin was at the bottom of the stairs. Black suit, no tie, top button undone. He was reading something on his phone with the focus of a man decoding a threat. When he heard her footstep, he looked up. Their eyes met. Held, the way their eyes always held now. Not the careful distance of employer and staff, not the raw intensity of the gala. Something in between. The space where 2 people who had not yet named what they were existed in the tension of the unnamed. Good morning. Morning. He pocketed his phone. How is he? Clear today. Good appetite. He dreamed about my mother smoking a cigarette. Something moved across his face, fast, gone before she could read it. But she caught the edge of it. Not amusement, not sadness. Something heavier. The expression of a man hearing about a dream that belonged to a story he knew more of than she realized. He is dreaming more about her lately, Seojin said. The lucid windows are expanding. His mind is processing things it suppressed during the fog periods. It is normal for patients in this stage. He nodded, watched her walk past him up the stairs, her footsteps quiet, her posture straight, the puff of coils catching stairwell light. He pulled out his phone again. Not the message he had been reading. A different screen. The contact for Nate Calloway. The forensic accountant he hired 3 days ago to restructure the books after Junho's betrayal. Nate was thorough. Nate was precise. Nate traced money the way dogs trace scent. And somewhere in the books, buried under 12 years of Junho's carefully layered transactions, was a shell company called Meridian Staffing that led directly to Sojin's personal account. He should have dissolved it, burned the trail, buried the records the way he buried everything that threatened his position. But dissolving Meridian meant dissolving the only proof that he had searched for Zara for 2 years. It meant erasing the evidence that his father's dying wish had been honored. And something in him could not destroy proof of the one thing he had done that was not about power. That sentimentality was going to cost him everything. His phone buzzed. Nate. Boss, I need to talk to you about a company called Meridian Staffing. The paper trail is unusual. Sojin closed his eyes, the lighter in his pocket pressed against his thigh. When? Today. The sooner the better. My study. 1 hour. He hung up, stood at the bottom of the stairs in a house his father built and his mother fortified and his enemies circled. Somewhere above him, a woman with dimples and steady hands was changing into fresh scrubs and opening a pharmacology textbook and building a life she believed began with an accident in a hallway. The hallway was not an accident. The pill bottle was not an accident. The only accident was what he felt afterward. And accidents, in his experience, were the things that brought empires down. He climbed the stairs, each step heavier than the last. At the top, he turned toward his study. The locked drawer waited. That night, while Zara slept in her new room with the window that overlooked the garden, her phone buzzed on the nightstand. A number she did not recognize. No caller ID, no name. A text message. 9 words. Ask your boyfriend who created Meridian. The screen glowed in the dark room for 8 seconds before the display timed out. She did not see it. She was dreaming. Not about her mother. About a man who caught a falling bottle in a hallway and looked at her like she was the answer to a question he had been asking his whole life. In the morning, she would see the message. She would read it twice. She would not respond. She would open her notebook to the page she had started on her first day at the estate and write the word Meridian in capital letters and draw a circle around it. And the circle would close around everything. Nate Calloway sat across from Sojin with a leather folder and the expression of a man who had found something he wished he had not. The study was quiet. Midday light through the window. The desk between them held a laptop and 2 glasses of water neither man had touched. Nate was 36, Black American, tall and narrow with wire-rimmed glasses that made him look academic until you watched him work, and then he looked like a surgeon cutting through tissue to find the thing hiding underneath. Sojin hired him 4 days after Junho was removed, because 12 years of books handled by a traitor required someone who could read numbers the way detectives read crime scenes. He opened the folder. Meridian Staffing Group, incorporated in Delaware 8 months and 6 days before Zara James was placed at this estate. Shell company. Single employee on record. 1 placement ever made. The company was created to hire 1 person. Sojin did not move. The incorporation documents list a registered agent in Wilmington. Standard. But the funding did not come from your father's accounts. I checked every line, every transfer, every holding he controls. Nothing. He turned a page. The funding came from a personal account registered to Park Sojin. Wire transfer. $212,000 over 14 months. The account also shows payments to a private investigation firm called Hartsfield Associates. Retainer fees, monthly reports, travel expenses. All beginning 23 months before Zara James arrived at this house. The room absorbed the information the way the house absorbed everything. Quietly, permanently. Nate closed the folder, set it on the desk, removed his glasses, and cleaned them with the slow precision of a man giving someone time to respond. You found her. Sojin stood, walked to the window, hands in pockets. The garden below was empty. A stone bench where Zara sometimes sat in the evening with her textbook was catching sunlight. 2 years ago, my father had a lucid episode. 3 hours, the longest in months. His voice was flat, controlled, the voice he used for business. He told me about a woman named Lorraine James, who saved his life in a parking lot in Norfolk 31 years ago. He told me about the car accident that was not an accident. He told me about a daughter who disappeared into the foster system. He asked me to find her. He turned from the window. I found her in 11 months, Baltimore, a hotel called the Broadmoor on North Charles Street. She worked housekeeping, night shift, 6 days a week. She lived in a studio apartment 14 blocks from the hotel and walked to work because she could not afford the bus on the days it rained and the fare increased. Nate said nothing. I watched her for 3 weeks before I made a decision. Not personally, through the investigators. They sent photographs, reports, her routine, her habits. She shopped at the same grocery store every Tuesday. She sat in the park on her day off and read library books about nursing. She had a library card with a cracked laminate, and she handled it like it was a passport. He picked up the lighter from the desk, did not click it, held it. I created Meridian, routed the placement through a channel my mother would not question, made it appear that my father had arranged everything, directly from his personal holdings. If my mother knew I was involved, she would have assumed I had motives and blocked the placement. Did you have motives? The question landed like a stone in still water. Sojin looked at the lighter in his hand. My motive was to fulfill a dying man's request. Place the daughter, let him see her. Pay the debt my family owed to a dead woman. That was the scope of it. And the hallway? The pill bottle? Silence. 3 seconds. 5. I memorized her medication schedule. I knew she delivered evening doses to the East Wing at 9:47. I positioned myself in the corridor at 9:42. The bottle falling was an accident. My hand catching it was not. Nate leaned back, glasses back on. The expression of a man recalculating everything he thought he knew about his employer. What happened after that was not in any plan I built. Sojin's voice changed, lower. The control cracking at the edges. She looked at me. Steady, no performance, no fear. No staff smile. She said, "Thank you," and walked away like I was anyone. Nobody walks away from me like I am anyone. Nobody has in 20 years. He set the lighter down. The kitchen at 1 in the morning. I could not sleep. That was real. She was there, and I did not expect her, and she told me she does not give people what they want at her expense, and something in me understood that sentence in a way I have never understood anything. But you knew who she was when you walked in? Yes. Does she know any of this? No. Nate closed his folder completely. Boss. The paper trail exists. I found it in 4 days. I was not even looking for it. If Vivian Caldwell has investigators half as good as yours, she has found it already. If the nursing board subpoenas employment records, Meridian unravels in a single hearing. Zara will find out. The only question is whether she finds out from you or from someone who wants to use it against her. Sojin knew. He had known for months. The file in the locked drawer was a bomb, with a timer he could hear but could not read. Every day it ticked. Every day he chose silence, because silence preserved the only thing he had ever wanted that was not built on fear. There is something else, Nate said. He opened the folder again. Last page. The private investigators, Hartsfield Associates. Their final report before Zara was placed. It includes a photograph. He slid it across the desk. 4 inches by 6. A 3-year-old girl holding a stuffed rabbit with one ear missing. The original is in your desk. I found the duplicate in the Hartsfield Digital Archives. If those archives are ever accessed by a third party, this photograph connects directly to you. Sujin picked up the duplicate. Same creased girl. Same missing ear. Same eyes asking a question. Destroy the Hartsfield archives. That removes one copy. The original is still in your drawer. And the memory of it is in your head every night at 3 in the morning, when I imagine you sit in this room and look at it. Sujin stared at him. Nate did not flinch. Forensic accountants who survived in rooms with men like Sujin learned early that flinching was an invitation. What do you recommend? Tell her. Tonight. Before someone else does. Because the difference between a confession and an exposure is the difference between a crack and a collapse. One you can repair, the other brings the whole structure down. Sojin did not answer. Nate stood, collected his folder, walked to the door. She saved your father's life 3 times. She stood in front of armed men in a dark room. She poured wine for a woman who humiliated her without spilling a drop. He paused at the door. A woman like that can survive the truth. What she cannot survive is finding out you did not trust her enough to give it. He left. The door closed. Sojin stood alone in the study with the duplicate photograph and the locked drawer, and the lighter he had not clicked once during the entire conversation, because some moments were too heavy for nervous habits. He should tell her tonight. He knew it the way he knew shipping schedules and security rotations, and the exact amount of silence required to make a room comply. He knew it. But tonight she had a pharmacology exam to study for, and tomorrow she had clinical prep. And every night for the rest of the week she would sit beside his father and read about kintsugi and gold and broken things. And he could not bring himself to break the thing that was forming between them by telling her it began with a file and a photograph, and a man who watched her through investigators' reports before he ever caught a bottle in a hallway. So he locked the duplicate in the drawer beside the original. 2 photographs now. Same girl, same rabbit, same unanswered question. And somewhere across the estate, Zara sat in her room with her phone, the text message from last night glowing on the screen. 9 words she had read 4 times. Ask your boyfriend who created Meridian. She had decided it was Vivian. Sabotage. Psychological pressure before the nursing board hearing. She would not take the bait. But she opened her notebook, turned to a fresh page, wrote Meridian in capital letters, drew a circle around it. Beneath the circle she wrote 3 questions. Who funded it? Why was it created 6 days before I was placed? Why does this number know about it? She closed the notebook, placed it in her bedside drawer, beside the photograph of her mother and the 4 notes from Mrs. Kang that said, "Leave." She would not chase this now. The board hearing was in 11 days. Her pharmacology exam in 3. She had priorities, and none of them were anonymous text messages designed to make her lose focus. But Zara James kept notebooks for a reason, and the questions she wrote down were the questions that eventually got answered. Every single time. 11 days until the board hearing. Zara built her defense the way she built everything, methodically, without help. At the small desk in her room, with the window overlooking the garden, she spread 8 months of documentation across the surface and organized it into a case. The medical notebook. Every vital sign. Every medication administered, with dosage, time, and patient response. Every emergency intervention documented within 15 minutes of occurrence. Every call to the private physician logged with duration and outcome. 312 entries across 243 days. Her nursing school transcripts. 3 years of grades. Not a single mark below 92. Clinical evaluations from instructors who wrote things like exceptional patient instinct and natural clinical judgment. She had been 11 credits short of completion when the money ran out. 11 credits between her and the credential that would have made the last 8 months unquestionable. The paramedic's letter. She had called him, introduced herself, explained the situation with the directness of a woman who did not have time for small talk. He remembered the night. He remembered her chart. He wrote the letter in 40 minutes and emailed it to her before she finished thanking him. In 20 years of emergency medicine, I have rarely seen a more competent emergency response. Licensed or not, this woman is a nurse. She rehearsed her statement every night after Elder Park fell asleep. Standing in her room, speaking to the window, adjusting her phrasing until every sentence was clean enough to survive scrutiny from people who had already decided she was guilty. I provided care consistent with the standard of a licensed professional because that is what the patient required and that is what I was trained to do. The patient's physician was unavailable on 3 occasions when emergency intervention was necessary. In each instance, I performed the interventions documented in my records, and the patient survived. I did not have a license. I had training, judgment, and the willingness to act when no one else was present. She practiced it until her voice did not waver on any word. Until the rhythm was steady. Until it sounded like truth, because it was truth. And truth did not need decoration. Sojin came to her door on the 6th night before the hearing, knocked twice. She opened it. He stood in the corridor with his hands in his pockets and the expression of a man delivering something he did not want to deliver. My legal team prepared a brief for the board. Character reference from the private physician. Testimony from the emergency medical team. A detailed analysis of the standard of care you provided compared to licensed benchmarks. He held out a folder. She did not take it. I told you. This is mine. I know what you told me. But the board is not a pharmacology exam. These are attorneys trained to turn competence into liability. They will frame every intervention as reckless, every medication as unauthorized, every night you spent keeping my father alive as evidence of criminal behavior. I know what they will do. Then let me help. She looked at the folder, then at him. Brown eyes steady, dimples absent because this was not a smiling moment. When I was 14, I performed CPR on a woman named Doreen for 7 minutes until the paramedics arrived. Nobody helped me. Nobody prepared a legal brief. Nobody stood in a doorway offering to make it easier. I kept her alive with my hands and my training and the fact that I refused to stop. That is who I am. If I walk into that hearing with your lawyers and your money and your name behind me, then the license they give me belongs to this house. It belongs to you. And I have spent my entire life making sure that nothing I have belongs to someone else. She said it without anger, without edge, with the quiet certainty of a woman stating the terms of her own existence. He lowered the folder, looked at her for a long time. The fluorescent light in the corridor hummed the way it had the night they first met. You are the most stubborn person I have ever known. I am aware. He almost smiled. What if they rule against you? Then I appeal. And I keep appealing until someone in that system reads my notebook and sees what I see. That credentials are paper, and competence is action, and the two are not always the same thing. He nodded, put the folder under his arm, turned to leave. Stopped. I want to tell you something. Her hand was on the door, ready to close it. She paused, looked at him over her shoulder. His jaw was tight. The lighter was in his pocket, and his hand was near it, but not touching it. His body language said the words were heavy, and his mouth was deciding whether to carry them across the threshold. What? 3 seconds. His lips parted. The sentence was right there, behind his teeth, ready. Meridian. The photograph. Baltimore. 2 years. I found you. I placed you. The hallway was not an accident. I am the reason you were in this house, and everything you think happened by chance was architecture. Good luck on the pharmacology exam. She blinked. Thank you. The door closed. He stood in the corridor, pressed his back against the wall. The same position. He had stood here the night he listened to her read about kintsugi. Now he stood here, holding the truth in his chest like a second heartbeat, and listening to the sound of her chair scraping as she sat back down at her desk to study. He was a coward. He ran an empire that controlled 14 ports, and he could not say 9 words to a woman in navy scrubs. He walked to his study, opened the locked drawer, looked at the photograph, closed the drawer, clicked the lighter 7 times. 4 days later, the hearing. Virginia Board of Nursing. A conference room in Richmond with fluorescent lights and a long table and 5 board members who would decide whether Zara James was a criminal or a nurse. Dr. Priya Nair sat at the centre. 38, Indian American, black hair pulled tight, reading glasses she wore on a chain when they were not on her face. She reviewed cases the way judges reviewed appeals, every detail weighed, every claim tested. No performance impressed her, and no tears moved her. Facts were the only currency she accepted. Vivian's attorney sat at the complainant's table, a man named Whitfield, with a shaved head and cufflinks that cost more than Zara's monthly salary at the Baltimore hotel. He presented the case with the smooth confidence of a man who had won rooms like this before. 8 months of unlicensed care, intravenous medication administration, emergency medical interventions performed without credentials. A patient with life-threatening conditions whose primary caretaker lacked legal authorization to provide the care she gave. He used the word reckless 4 times, unauthorized 6 times, dangerous twice. He painted a picture of a woman playing nurse in a rich man's house while the family looked the other way. Zara sat alone at the response table. No attorney, no advisor. Navy blazer she bought at a consignment shop. Hair in its puff, hands folded on the table. Still. When it was her turn, she opened her notebook. Not a legal brief, not a prepared defense drafted by a team. A notebook with a blue cover and 8 months of handwriting. She walked the board through every entry, every vital sign, every intervention. She explained her clinical reasoning for each decision. She did not apologize. She did not plead. She presented evidence with the precision of someone who had been trained to observe, document, and act, and who had done all 3 without a single error in 243 days. She presented the paramedic's letter. She presented her transcripts. She presented the 3 emergency interventions that saved Elder Park's life. For each one, she walked through the sequence: what she observed, what she assessed, what she did, what the outcome was. Textbook. Every step in order. Every decision defensible. Dr. Nair asked one question. Miss James, you were 11 credits short of licensure. Why did you not disclose your status to the family when you were placed? Zara did not hesitate. The placement was arranged through a staffing agency. I was presented as a caretaker, not a nurse. I provided caretaker-level duties for the first 3 months. When the patient's condition deteriorated and the private physician became less available, I began performing interventions that exceeded caretaker scope, because the alternative was allowing the patient to die while waiting for someone with a piece of paper to arrive. Silence. Dr. Nair wrote something on her notepad. The board members exchanged glances. Whitfield attempted redirect. Dr. Nair cut him off. I have heard your arguments, counselor. I would like to hear more from Miss James. The hearing lasted 2 hours and 40 minutes. The board deliberated for 38 minutes. Zara sat in the hallway alone. The fluorescent light buzzed above her the same way it buzzed in every corridor she had ever waited in. Foster care offices, hospital waiting rooms, hotel break rooms. She had spent her life in hallways, waiting for other people to decide her future. The door opened. Dr. Nair stood in the frame. Miss James, the board has reached a decision. Your provisional license is granted effective immediately. You may practice under supervision while completing your remaining credits. The criminal referral has been declined. The board finds that your care was consistent with the standard of a licensed professional and likely prevented the patient's death on multiple occasions. She paused, removed her glasses, looked at Zara with something that was not quite warmth but was adjacent to it. Finish your degree, Ms. James. You have earned what comes after it. Zara walked outside. Richmond sunlight hit her face. She stood on the steps of the building and breathed. Her hands were shaking for the first time in months. Not from fear. From the release of it. She called Darla first. Darla screamed so loud Zara had to hold the phone away from her ear. She called Sojin second. He answered on the first ring, which meant he had been holding the phone. I did it. I know you did. How do you know? I just walked out. Pause. She heard the lighter click on his end. Once. The pause stretched 1 second longer than it should have. Because I never doubted you would. She hung up smiling. Both dimples. Standing in the sun outside a building where she had just proved to 5 strangers that she was who she had always known she was. He hung up staring at the locked drawer. The smile on his face lasted 3 seconds before the weight returned. She had just fought the hardest battle of her life alone and won. Clean. On her own terms. With her own notebook and her own voice and no help from anyone. And the thing he was hiding could undo all of it because the board cleared her based on a placement through Meridian staffing. If the real ownership of Meridian surfaced, the entire hearing could be reopened, her license challenged, the criminal referral reinstated. Not because her care was deficient, because her placement was engineered by the son of her patient. Conflict of interest, fraud. The legal terms stacked like bricks. His phone buzzed. Nate. Vivian's people accessed the Delaware corporate registry this morning. They pulled Meridian's incorporation records. The timer on the bomb clicked forward. He could hear it now. Not imagined. Real. Elder Park was dying the way candles die. Not suddenly, in stages. The flame shrinking and steadying and shrinking again, until the room adjusted to the dimness and forgot there had been more light. His lucid windows were still clear, but shorter. 2 hours instead of 3. Then 90 minutes. Then an hour so sharp and focused, it felt like the sun breaking through fog before the clouds returned. The doctors stopped adjusting timelines because timelines had become meaningless. His body was making its own schedule now. Zara knew. She had known for weeks. The numbers in her notebook told the story the doctors confirmed with careful language, and she confirmed with her hands every time she checked his pulse and felt the rhythm thinning like thread pulled too tight. Tuesday afternoon, 2:17. He was awake, propped against pillows, the Celadon pottery book open on the blanket, though he had not turned a page in an hour. He was looking at the photograph on his nightstand. Lorraine. The photograph he had kept for 31 years. She would have liked you. Zara was checking his IV flow rate. She paused. You have said that before. I am saying it again because it is more true every time. He coughed, small, controlled. The kind of cough that stayed in the chest because the body did not have the strength to push it out. She would have liked the way you read. She hated being read to by people who sounded like they were performing. You read like you were talking to someone in the room. I am talking to someone in the room. He smiled. See? That? She would have said exactly that. She finished the IV check, wrote numbers in the notebook. His eyes followed her pen. How many notebooks have you filled? This is the fourth. What do you write that takes 4 notebooks? Everything. Your vitals, your medication responses, your sleep patterns, what you eat and how much. What you say during lucid episodes. You write down what I say? The important things. What have I said that was important? She looked at him. This man, 81 years old, liver failing, body contracting toward its ending. A man who had built an empire from a one-room apartment in Flushing and spent 30 years searching for the daughter of a woman who saved his life with her bare hands. You told me my mother held pressure on your wound for 4 hours. You told me she refused your money. You told me the car accident was not an accident. She paused. And you told me I was never the help, that I was always the reason this house still stands. His eyes filled. Not spilling, just filling. The way a river rises before it crests. I meant every word. I know. That is why I wrote them down. He reached for her hand. She gave it. His grip was lighter than it had been a month ago. Lighter than last week. Each day a little less pressure. A little less hold. The body slowly loosening its connection to the world, one finger at a time. I need you to do something for me. Anything. Forgive my son for what he has not told you yet. Zara's hand stilled inside his. The monitor beeped its steady rhythm. The room held its breath. What has he not told me? Elder Park closed his eyes. Not from fatigue. From the weight of a sentence he had been carrying since the day his son walked into this room 2 years ago and said, I found her. He will tell you, when he finds the courage. And when he does, I need you to remember that the beginning of a thing is not the thing itself. A seed is not a tree. A first step is not a journey. What matters is what grew. You are scaring me. Good. Scared means you care enough to be afraid of losing something. 3 weeks ago you had nothing to lose. Now you do. She pulled her hand back. Gently. Not in anger. In the self-protective reflex of a woman who had spent 30 years building walls and could feel someone trying to open a window. He watched her stand, straighten his blanket, check the oxygen sensor. The professional rituals that anchored her when the personal became too much. Whatever it is, she said without looking at him, it does not change what I do in this room. You are my patient. That is not conditional. I know. That is the other thing your mother would have said. That night, the kitchen. 1 in the morning. Same moonlight on the same steel countertops. Same hum from the commercial refrigerator. The only room in the estate where the power dynamics dissolved, because kitchens, at 1 in the morning, belong to no one, and therefore belong to everyone. Zara was already there. Tea, notebook open. Not the medical one, the personal one. The page marked Meridian was still circled. Beneath the 3 questions she had written 11 days ago, she had added nothing. The board hearing was 1. The text message had not repeated. She had decided the anonymous number was a dead end. But Elder Park's words from that afternoon sat on her chest like a stone. Forgive my son for what he has not told you yet. Sajin entered at 1:12. He stopped when he saw her. They looked at each other across the kitchen the way they always did in this room. No titles, no positions, no estate, just 2 people and moonlight. He sat beside her, not across from her, beside, their shoulders touching. She did not move away. Your father said something to me today. He says a lot of things. He told me to forgive you for something you have not told me yet. The kitchen went still. The refrigerator hum became the loudest sound in the world. Sojin's shoulder against hers went rigid. A tension that started in his jaw and traveled down his neck, into the muscles of his arm where it pressed against hers. He should not have said that. But he did. So now I am sitting here at 1 a.m, wondering what it is that the man I... She stopped, recalibrated, started again. What it is that you have not told me. He turned to look at her. Close. 12 inches between their faces. She could see the silver streak at his temple, the jaw that looked carved rather than born, the dark eyes that gave nothing away, except right now, when they were giving away everything. I want to tell you. I have wanted to tell you for weeks. Every time I get close to it, something stops me. What stops you? The possibility that after I say it, you will look at me the way you look at everyone else in this house, like I am someone to manage, someone to navigate around, someone who controls where you go. She studied his face. The exhaustion. The lighter he was not clicking because his hands were on the table, both of them open, as if he was showing her he had no weapons. Tell me. He opened his mouth. The sentence was there, right there. The same sentence that had been behind his teeth in the corridor outside her room, the same one that had almost broken free during the phone call after her hearing. She put her hand on his, palm down on his knuckles. Warm, steady. The same steadiness she used to stabilize IV lines and check oxygen levels and hold dying men's hands in dark rooms. Whatever it is, I have survived foster homes and hotel night shifts and a woman who poured wine on me in front of 300 people. I can survive a sentence. He turned his hand over, their fingers interlaced. Second time. Deliberate. In the moonlit kitchen where they had first spoken alone, where she told him she did not give people what they wanted at her expense. When I tell you, and I will tell you, it will change how you see everything that has happened between us. Every moment. From the hallway to right now. Then why are you holding my hand while you say that? Because after I tell you, you may not let me hold it again. Silence. The refrigerator, the moonlight, their fingers. Locked together on a kitchen table in a house built on secrets. She squeezed his hand. Once, hard, then let go. Tell me when you are ready, but do not wait until someone else tells me first. That is the one thing I will not forgive. She stood. Collected her mug and notebook. Walked toward the doorway, stopped. Did not turn around. The anonymous text I received 11 days ago, it said to ask you who created Meridian. She heard him stop breathing. I assumed it was Vivian. I did not ask you because I decided it was sabotage. She paused. But your father told me to forgive you, and now you are telling me it will change everything. So I am going to ask you one time. Did you create Meridian? The kitchen held a silence so complete that the moonlight seemed to make a sound. Yes. One word. No emphasis, no excuse. Said the way he said none of them at the dinner table, in front of 10 women. Quiet. Final. She stood in the doorway with her back to him. Her shoulders did not drop. Her posture did not change. Her hand on the doorframe was steady. How long have you known who I am? 2 years. She nodded, one small movement. Then she walked away, her footsteps quiet on the tile, disappearing down the corridor toward the east wing, where her patient's monitor beeped and her notebooks waited, and the photograph of her mother sat on a nightstand beside a life that had just cracked down the middle. Sojin sat alone in the kitchen, moonlight on his hands. The hands that had caught a pill bottle they were never supposed to catch by accident. The hands that had pulled her through a gala, the hands that were empty now. He picked up the lighter from his pocket, clicked it, no flame. The fluid was gone. He had been clicking an empty lighter for days without realizing it. He set it on the table. First time he had ever let it go. And sat in the silence of a kitchen that had just heard the beginning of an ending he had spent 2 years trying to prevent. She did not sleep. She sat at her desk with the notebook open and rewrote the timeline of her own life. 8 months and 6 days before her placement, a shell company was created in Delaware. Funded by Park So-jin. Not his father. Him. The man who caught the bottle. The man who asked his lieutenant to find out everything about her. The man who stood in a hallway and listened to her read about kintsugi and said nothing, and walked away, carrying something he could not name. He could name it. He had always been able to name it. He knew her name before she knew his. He knew about Lorraine before she knew about Lorraine. He knew about the foster homes and the hotel and the unfinished degree and the library card with the cracked laminate before she ever set foot in a corridor where a pill bottle would conveniently fall from a tray she had carried 100 times without incident. She went back further. The staffing agency call. She had never applied to Meridian. She had been confused when they contacted her, asked why they called her specifically. The rep said her name came up in their database. She did not question it, because questioning good luck felt like tempting it to leave. It was not luck. It was a man with resources and a file and a photograph of a 3-year-old girl holding a rabbit. She opened the bedside drawer, pulled out the photograph of Lorraine, looked at her mother's face, the tired eyes, the interrupted smile. Your mother saved my life. True. I spent 30 years searching for you. True. But it was not the old man who found her. It was his son. And his son did not just find her. His son watched her for 3 weeks through investigators. His son memorized her schedule. His son built a company and fabricated a staffing agency and positioned her inside a house where a pill bottle would fall and a hand would catch it, and a woman who had never been chosen by anyone would believe she was being seen for the first time. The foster homes, 3rd one, 6th one, the ones that were decent, I funded them, anonymously. Elder Park said he funded them. But was that true? Or had Sujin arranged that too? How deep did the architecture go? How many moments she believed were chance, or kindness, or luck, were actually the engineering of a man who decided where she belonged before she knew he existed? She pressed her palms against the desk until her fingers went white. She was not angry. She was something worse. She was recalculating, running every memory through a new filter and watching each one change color. The hallway became a stage. The kitchen became a setup. The gala became a performance. Give me the one no one wanted became a line delivered by a man who had already chosen her in a file 2 years before he said it out loud. She thought about the foster system. 17 homes she did not choose. Agencies that moved her from house to house based on paperwork she never saw. Social workers who decided her placement over coffee in offices she was not invited to. Her entire childhood was other people deciding where she went. And now this. At 6 in the morning, she walked to the East Wing. Elder Park was sleeping. The monitor beeped. She checked his vitals, wrote numbers. Her handwriting was steady, because her handwriting was always steady. The body did what training demanded, even when the mind was somewhere else entirely. She looked at the old man's face. Thin skin, veins like map lines. The face that had told her about her mother. the face that had given her the only history she possessed. "Forgive my son for what he has not told you yet." He knew. He had always known. Father and son holding the same secret between them like a rope, with her on the other end. She did not blame Elder Park. He was dying. His request to find her was the act of a man trying to repay a debt before the clock ran out. That was love in the only language a dying man had left. But Sojin was not dying. Sojin was 42 years old and fully capable of walking up to a woman in a hallway and saying, "Your mother saved my father's life 31 years ago, and I have been searching for you for 2 years, and I brought you here to fulfill his dying wish." He could have said that on the first day, on any day. He chose not to. He chose the bottle, the corridor, the lingering looks, the slow orbit of a man pretending to discover someone he had already studied like a case file. At 7:15, Sojin appeared in the East Wing corridor. He looked like he had not slept. Shirt wrinkled, no jacket. The lighter was not in his hand. He stopped when he saw her coming out of Elder Park's room. They stood 10 feet apart. The distance between them felt like a new measurement. Not the intimate distance of the kitchen, not the professional distance of employer and staff. Something colder. The distance between a woman who just learned the ground she was standing on had been built by someone else and the man who built it. "Can we talk?" "We are talking. Properly. In my study." She looked at him. His face. The cheekbones. The jaw. The silver streak. She had memorized this face over 8 months of glances and corridors and one moonlit kitchen. She had trusted this face, not because it was beautiful, because it seemed honest. Because the man behind it caught a pill bottle and asked why she stayed, and sat on a hallway floor outside his dying father's room, because leaving felt wrong. All of it, architecture. "Your study, 10 minutes. She walked past him. He watched her go, the footsteps quiet, the puff of coils catching fluorescent light the way it always did. Same woman, same walk. Same steady posture that made harsh lighting gentle against her face. Everything the same, and nothing the same. The study. He stood at the window. She sat in the chair across from the desk. The same chair Madame Park sat in when she heard, "Give me the one no one wanted." And the hope died in real time on her face. On the desk between them was the file, open. The photograph of the 3-year-old girl on top. Zara looked at it and something behind her eyes shifted. A door closing. "That is me." "Yes." "How long have you had it?" 2 years. "Where did you get it?" "The investigators I hired to find you. Hartsfield Associates. They accessed foster records and cross-referenced them with your mother's last known address in Norfolk. The photograph was in a file from your first placement." She picked up the photograph, held it the way she held medication bottles. Carefully, precisely, as if the wrong pressure might break it. "I was 3. Yes. I do not remember this rabbit. The investigator's notes say you carried it for 2 years. The second foster home took it away. Something about hygiene rules." Her jaw tightened, a muscle flexed and released. The second foster home. 4 children and not enough food for 5. They took the rabbit and she cried for 3 days and then she stopped crying. Because crying did not bring things back. She set the photograph down. "Tell me everything, from the beginning, leave nothing out." He told her, all of it. The lucid episode 2 years ago. His father's story about Lorraine. The request to find the daughter. 11 months of searching. The hotel in Baltimore, 3 weeks of surveillance through investigators. Her routine, her habits, the grocery store on Tuesdays. The library books about nursing, the cracked laminate on the library card. You watched me shop for groceries. The investigators watched. That is the same thing. He did not argue. He told her about creating Meridian, the placement route, the fabricated staffing credentials, making it appear that Elder Park had arranged everything. He told her about the hallway, the medication schedule memorized, positioning himself at 9:42 for a 9:47 delivery. The bottle was real. The fall was real. You stumbled on the floor mat, and the tray tilted, and the bottle dropped. That was not staged. Just everything around it. He said nothing. The kitchen, 1 in the morning. I could not sleep. Going to the kitchen was not planned. You being there was not planned. But you knew who I was when you saw me? Yes. You knew who I was every time you looked at me. Like you were seeing something unexpected. You knew who I was when you asked me why I stayed. You knew who I was when you took my hand at the gala and walked me through a room full of people who thought I was nothing. You are not nothing. That is not the point. Her voice cracked. One fracture, sealed immediately. The point is that I thought you saw me. I thought for the first time in my life, someone looked at me without a file, without a case number, without a placement form. I thought you saw Zara, not the daughter of a woman who saved your father, not a debt, not a project. Me. He stepped forward. She held up her hand. Stop. He stopped. You did what every system I have ever been in did. You decided where I belonged. You moved me. You placed me. You engineered proximity and called it fate. The only difference between you and the foster system is that you caught a pill bottle while you did it. The sentence landed in the room like a body hitting the floor. Sojin flinched. The first time she had ever seen him flinch. The pill bottle was the only honest moment in this hallway, she continued. Your hand moved before your plan caught up. That reflex was real. Everything before it and everything after it was a decision you made without me. She stood. You should have told me on the first day. You should have walked up to me and said your mother saved my father, and I spent 2 years finding you, and I brought you here because he is dying and he wanted to see you. I would have understood that. I would have stayed for that, because that is a debt, and I understand debts. She walked to the door, turned. What I do not understand is why you turned a debt into something that felt like love, and did not tell me which one it was. She left. The door closed with the click that this house had perfected. Quiet. Final. Sojin stood in his study, the file open on the desk, the photograph of the 3-year-old girl staring up at the ceiling. The lighter was on the kitchen table where he had left it last night. He had nothing in his hands, nothing in his pockets, nothing between him and the silence, except the sound of a monitor beeping in the East Wing, where a woman who had just dismantled him with 12 sentences was already back at work, checking vitals, writing numbers. Hands steady, because Zara James did not stop working when the world broke. She wrote it down and kept going. She always kept going. That was the thing he loved about her, and it was the thing that was going to carry her out of his life. Elder Park died on a Wednesday at 4:47 in the morning. There was no emergency, no alarm, no crash cart. His heart rate slowed the way a song slows when the musician decides the performance is complete. Each beat further from the last, the spaces between them widening, like pauses in a conversation where both people know the last word has already been said. Zara was there. She had been there since midnight, not because the monitors indicated crisis, because she knew. 8 months of tracking this man's body had given her a fluency in its language that no machine could replicate. The subtle change in his breathing at 11. The way his fingers relaxed against the blanket at 11:30. The imperceptible shift in skin temperature at midnight that told her the body was beginning its final negotiation with itself. She called Madame Park at 3. "You should come." Madame Park arrived at 3:19. No pearls, no silk. A robe and bare feet. Her hair was down for the first time Zara had ever seen. Silver and black and longer than expected. She looked smaller without the armor. She looked like a woman instead of a fortress. She sat on the right side of the bed, took his hand, did not speak. There was nothing to perform for. No guests, no staff. No reputation to maintain. Just a woman sitting beside the man she had shared a bed with for 43 years. The man who kept a photograph of another woman in his study, and a secret the size of a life pressed against his chest every night while she slept beside him. She had spent 3 weeks living with the knowledge that her husband did not trust her with the most important thing he had ever done. 3 weeks understanding why. 3 weeks arriving at a truth she had never spoken aloud. He was right not to trust her. She would have stopped him. She would have called it reckless. She would have prioritized the family name over a dead woman's sacrifice and a living daughter's chance at something resembling home. That recognition had done something to her that no gala or dinner or power negotiation had ever done. It had made her honest. Not kind. Madame Park would never be kind the way other people understood kindness. But honest. For the first time in decades, she could see herself clearly. And what she saw was a woman who had spent 40 years building walls so expertly that she had walled out the one story that mattered. Sojin arrived at 3:31. He stood in the doorway. The same doorway where his father had placed Zara's hand into his. The same threshold he had crossed and uncrossed 100 times in the past 8 months. Zara was on the left side of the bed. She did not look at him. They had not spoken since the study. 2 days of silence. She continued her shifts. She checked vitals. She read the Celadon book. She performed every duty with the same precision she had performed them since her first day. But she did not look at him in the corridors, did not pause when he entered a room, did not leave tea on the kitchen counter the way she had begun doing in the weeks before. She had not left. But she had pulled something back behind a wall and he could feel its absence. The way a room feels the absence of a lamp that used to be there. He stepped inside. Sat in the chair by the door, not beside the bed. He did not feel he had earned the bedside. Not anymore. Elder Park opened his eyes at 4:12, lucid, completely. The kind of clarity that comes when the body has stopped fighting and the mind is freed from the burden of keeping the machine running. His eyes moved from Madame Park to Zara to Seo-jin. He took in the geometry of the room. His wife on one side. The daughter of the woman who saved him on the other. His son by the door, apart. He saw the distance. "Come here." His voice was dry, thin, but clear, directed at Sojin. Sojin moved to the bedside, stood between the two women, his mother on the right, Zara on the left, the old man in the center. The architecture of a family that was not quite a family yet, but was closer to one than any arrangement of people in this house had ever been. "Sit." He sat, on the edge of the bed. His father's hand found his knee. The grip was barely there, a memory of strength rather than strength itself. "Did you tell her?" Sojin looked at Zara. She looked at Elder Park. "He told me," Zara said. "Are you angry?" "Yes." "Good. The old man's lips moved into something that was almost a smile. Your mother would have been angry too. She had a temper like a summer storm. Fast, loud, and then sun. He breathed. 3 breaths, each one shallower. I asked him to find you. That was my choice, my debt. He did not want to. He said it was manipulation. He said you deserved to be found honestly or not at all. I told him I was dying, and dying men do not have the luxury of honesty. Dying men have urgency. He coughed, small. Zara reached for the water, held it to his lips. Even now, in the middle of anger and betrayal and a room that held more fractures than the kintsugi pottery he loved, she held the water steady and let him drink. He found you in 11 months, brought me your photograph. His eyes went to the nightstand, the photograph of Lorraine beside the lamp. He sat in that chair and told me he would place you and pay the debt and keep his distance. I agreed. He paused. His grip on Surgeon's knee tightened. The last reserves of pressure his hand could produce. 6 weeks later, he came to this room at 2 in the morning, sat where you are sitting now. He told me he had made a terrible mistake. Zara looked at Sojin. He was staring at his father's face, his jaw working, eyes red at the edges. He said he was supposed to manage a debt. Instead, he met a woman who poured wine for someone who humiliated her without spilling a drop. A woman who read to a dying man about gold and broken things, and made the dying feel less like an ending. He said he did not know what to do with what he felt because what he felt was not in the plan. The monitor beeped. Slower now. The beginning was his, the old man said. I asked him to build it. He built it. The hallway, the placement, the bottle. That was architecture. Mine and his. He breathed, but everything after the hallway was not architecture. It was a man falling in love with a woman he was not supposed to fall in love with, and being too afraid to tell her the floor she was standing on was one he had laid. He closed his eyes, opened them. The clarity was fading. She could see it, the tide going out. The middle was yours, Zara. Every conversation, every night in the kitchen, every time you refused to leave when anyone else would have run. That was you, not him, not me. You. He did not make you brave. He did not make you stay. He did not make you pour that glass of wine, or stand in front of armed men, or save my life 3 times with your bare hands. That was the woman your mother raised in 3 years, and the woman you raised yourself in the 27 after. His hand reached for hers. She gave it. His fingers closed around both of them now. Sojin's me and Zara's hand. The end belongs to both of you. I will not be here to see it. But I am asking you. Not as a dying man paying a debt. As a father. Do not let the beginning destroy what came after it. His eyes closed. His breathing slowed, the monitor's beeping stretched into longer intervals. The green light pulsed, each pulse further from the last. Madame Park leaned forward, pressed her lips to his forehead. The first kiss Zara had seen between them. Private. Brief. The kind of kiss that carries 43 years inside it. Rest, Madame Park whispered. I will take care of them. He smiled. She was certain he smiled. The muscles moved. The monitor showed a brief acceleration. The body's last response to something that made it want to stay. Then it slowed. And slowed. And slowed. 4:47, the green line flattened. No alarm. Zara had disabled the audible alert 20 minutes ago because the sound of a machine announcing death was not the sound this room deserved. The silence was enough. The silence was the truest thing the house had ever held. Zara checked the time, wrote it in her notebook. The last entry she would ever make for Elder Park Donghoon. 4:47 a.m. Cardiac cessation. Patient at rest. Her handwriting was steady. It was always steady. She released his hand, placed it on top of the blanket, adjusted his fingers the way she adjusted them every night when she tucked him in, straightened the blanket, smoothed the pillow. Then she looked at Sojin. He was broken. Not visibly, structurally, the way a building looks intact after an earthquake until you see the cracks running through the foundation. His hand was still on his father's knee. His jaw was locked so tight the muscles vibrated. His eyes were open and dry, and looking at a face that would never open its eyes again. "Come sit with him," Zara said. He looked at her. The first time their eyes had met in 2 days. "Come sit with him." He moved from the edge to the chair beside the bed, took his father's hand from where Zara had placed it, held it. The hand that had built an empire and written a 4-page letter and searched for a stranger's daughter for 30 years, and never once let go of the guilt that his world had caused a good woman's death. Madam Park on the right, Sojin in the chair. Zara stood, stepped back, gave them the room. She walked to the window. Dawn was beginning, the Jinya sky turning from black to grey to the first thin line of copper on the horizon. The garden below was dark. The estate quiet. The chandelier in the dining room, where 10 women had sat 8 months ago, was off. The terrace where 300 people had watched Seojin choose her was empty. She stood at the window and let the family grieve behind her. She was not family. She knew that. Whatever Elder Park wanted her to be, whatever Seojin felt or did not feel, whatever Madam Park conceded or withheld. She was a woman in navy scrubs who had come to this house through a door someone else built, and now had to decide whether to walk back through it. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She did not check it, but later. Back in her room. After the doctors came and the funeral home was called, and the house began the slow process of absorbing the absence of the man who had held it together. She checked. Final semester nursing exam results. She passed. Every one. Full license in 6 weeks. Earned. Hers. Nobody's debt. Nobody's project. Nobody's architecture. On her desk, the Meridian documents sat in a folder. Mate Calloway had quietly delivered the day before. She had not asked for them. He left them outside her door with a note that said, "You deserve to see the full picture." Inside was everything. The incorporation records, the bank transfers, the investigator reports. The photograph of the 3-year-old girl holding a rabbit with one ear missing. She picked up the photograph. Looked at it. The girl who did not know that in 27 years, a dying man would spend a fortune finding her. Who did not know that the man's son would fall in love with her while pretending to discover her? Who did not know that she would stand at a window in Virginia at dawn, having just watched the dying man die, and feeling both loss and freedom, and not knowing which one was heavier? She opened her notebook, turned to the Meridian page. Below the questions she had written weeks ago, below the circle she had drawn around the word, she wrote, "He told me." Not in time, but he told me. And below that, the beginning was a lie, the middle was mine. I am still deciding about the end. She closed the notebook, put the photograph in the frame beside her mother's picture. 2 photographs now. Lorraine holding an infant, the infant holding a rabbit. 30 years apart. Connected by a parking lot in Norfolk, and a man who just died trying to make it right. She would not forgive Sojin today. The wound was too fresh and the stitches had not set, and she was too smart to mistake exhaustion for peace. But she would not leave, because leaving was what every system she had ever been inside expected her to do. Leave the foster home. Leave the hotel. Leave the house where powerful people decided you were inconvenient. Walk away. Disappear. Become a ghost again. Zara James had spent 30 years being moved, placed, positioned, managed, arranged. She was done being moved. If she stayed in this house, it would be because she chose to. If she left, it would be because she chose to. Either way, the choice was hers, not his, not his father's. Not the memory of a dead woman who saved a stranger's life and paid for it with her own. Hers. She changed into fresh scrubs, pulled her hair into its puff, walked to the kitchen where Darla was already crying over the stove, because Darla had loved the old man too, and grief in a kitchen looked like burning toast and tears falling into a mixing bowl. Zara hugged her. First time she had hugged anyone in this house. Darla held on like a woman holding a lifeboat. "He is gone," Zara said. "I know." "He went easy." "Good." They stood in the kitchen, morning light replacing moonlight on the steel countertops. The same countertops where Zara and Sojin had sat twice and talked about things that mattered, where she told him she did not give people what they wanted at her expense, where he confessed a truth that cracked the foundation of everything between them. She let go of Darla, poured 2 cups of tea, set one in front of the cook and one in front of herself, sat down. Somewhere in the study, a desk drawer sat unlocked for the first time in 2 years. The file was open. The photograph was gone. Nate had delivered it to Zara. The lighter sat on the kitchen table where Sojin had left it 2 nights ago. Empty. Dead. A habit abandoned in the room where the habit stopped being enough to hold what he was carrying. Somewhere in the east wing, a heart monitor was dark. The green light was off. The beeping had stopped. The room was still and clean, and it smelled like antiseptic and jasmine tea, and the fading warmth of a man who had spent his last breath asking 2 broken people to build something whole. Somewhere in a room with a window, a notebook sat closed on a desk beside 2 photographs and a folder full of evidence that a love story began as architecture. The last line, written in steady handwriting, said, "I am still deciding about the end." She was not running. She was not staying because someone told her to. She was sitting in a kitchen, drinking tea, with the only friend she had, in a house that had tried to break her and failed. And in 6 weeks, she would have a license. Real, full, earned. With her name on it and nobody else's. That was the beginning of whatever came next. Not his beginning, not his father's, hers. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our next story. Share your thoughts in the comments and inspire others.